Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending our press briefing here because we have a very fun announcement that we're going to be talking about here with regard to trade missions and growing the state of Nebraska. With me today, I have Senator Friesen, who is going to be talking in a few minutes about a resolution he's bringing to the legislature, as well as Buck Wehrbein, who is the policy chair for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. He was also the head of the Nebraska Beef Council here, or before that. And then Matt Mueller, who is the COO of Huddle. And we are here today to announce, I'm also being joined by several of my cabinet members. I've got Eric Dunning from the Department of Insurance, Tony Goins, Department of Economic Development, and Steve Wellman from the Department of Agriculture. And we're joined by such an august group here today because we are announcing a trade mission to the UK and Ireland August 20th through the 28th. Now, trade is very important to the state of Nebraska. In a given year, we'll export about $10 billion worth of goods and services. 95% of the world's consumers lie outside our borders, and so we have to go out there and get them. Obviously, it's been a challenge with the pandemic to be able to travel. I was able to make a trip to Germany last November, but by and large, most of our trips have been curtailed. In fact, I think the last time we were able to go overseas before that trip to Germany last November was September, the fall of 2019, before the pandemic really hit. But we need to continue to focus on how we grow our trade exports. And we've actually, 2021 so far for agriculture has been very good. We saw that as far as our beef exports in 2021, just through November, so we only have 11 months worth of data, that we exported $1.63 billion worth of beef. That is higher than any previous year. In fact, the highest previous year with full 12 months was $1.44 billion, and that was 2018. And while we don't have specific numbers for corn in Nebraska, I can tell you that as a country, the U.S. exported $17.43 billion worth of corn, which was, to put that in perspective, more corn that the U.S. exported than in 2019 and 2020 combined. So again, a great year for exporting corn. Soybeans were up about 12%, so again, we saw great ag exports last year. And that's only through 11 months. We're expecting tomorrow that the December data will be released, and of course we'll build on that as well. And when we think about beef exports, actually Nebraska is the top U.S. state as far as contribution to our U.S. beef exports to the European Union. So in 2021, Nebraska accounted for about 40% of all the beef that was exported from the U.S. to the European Union. So again, Nebraska certainly punches above our weight when it comes to that. So what we want to do is continue to expand those relationships. And specifically when we think about the UK and Ireland, there's tremendous opportunities. So for example, the UK has the largest insurance industry in Europe. Nebraska is known for our insurance industry here, and it's a great combination of opportunities to be able to talk about. We also know that companies like HDR have 5 locations in the UK where they do engineering consulting. And that's actually why we have Matt Mueller here, because Huddle has 2 locations, one in London, one in Liverpool. And in fact, if you look at all your English Premier League football teams, they're doing the athletic analysis of those folks. So they've got a great business over there in the UK. So there's a great opportunity for Nebraska companies to be able to go over there and find business opportunities. Also, if you look at Ireland, last year about $442 billion worth of U.S. investment into Ireland, and with the UK leaving the European Union through Brexit, Ireland is the only English-speaking country left in the European Union, so great entry point for that investment. And of course, with UK leaving the European Union in Brexit, that creates opportunities as well. So the UK has been negotiating a free trade agreement with the United States. It's gotten stalled a little bit with the change of administrations, but we still think there's going to be tremendous opportunities there. In fact, Irish and UK companies invest in Nebraska and have created about 6,000 jobs. And in fact, we've got a great UK company, GSK, that just east of Lincoln here is creating pharmaceutical products. So lots of great interactions between the UK, Ireland, Nebraska, and we want to grow those even further. So that's why we're going to host this trade mission. So if people are interested in going on this trade mission with us, August 20th through the 28th, please see Cobus Block, and that's Cobus, C-O-B-U-S .B-L-O-C-K at nebraska.gov. That's his email address. You can email him. He'll be taking the interest from people who want to go over with us to the UK and Ireland, August 20th through the 28th. Cobus.block at nebraska.gov is his email, so email him and let him know that you have an interest in attending that trade mission. We'd love to help open up doors for folks to be able to get into the UK. We also want to develop the relationships like we have in the European Union with companies like Corbion and Novozymes and Evonik, who've all invested here in our country and in our state specifically at creating those jobs here in Nebraska. So, exciting opportunities. We want to look to continue to develop those international trade relationships to be able to find more markets for our products and services, get more investment back here into the state of Nebraska. And with that, now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Senator Friesen. Senator Friesen is going to talk a little about a resolution that he has got to help promote this great relationship between Nebraska and the UK.
Thank you, Governor. So I've always appreciated the governor and his strong support of agriculture, and me as a corn producer, ag person, I really always appreciated his effort to build our exports across the world, because we've been referred to numerous times as a breadbasket of the world, and that's what I think we're turning out to be more and more. We're a very reliable supplier, and building these relationships as a member of the Corn Board back in the day, that's what is really important, is building relationships. And as countries reach out and start to trust us in our quality of our product and our supplies, I think that's what, in the end, really highlights Nebraska's great agriculture combination of cattle, corn, ethanol, the hogs, everything else falls in place in our #1 industry. So I will be introducing a resolution that talks about the close alliance with the United Kingdom, and it does talk about we appreciate there being a long-standing ally of the United States, and they continue to stand with us always, and the legislature really appreciates the domestic trade that they want to start working with us, and I know they're going through some times too where these trade partnerships are going to be extremely important. So I, for one, kind of excited about this and how we might go forward, and it's the value-added part of agriculture. That's one thing I think we need to focus on even more than exporting my raw corn. It's how can we add value to it, either through beef or whatever else we may do. That's what brings a lot of value to Nebraska. So I really appreciate the governor and everyone else that's up here and what they're doing today. And I fully support this, and we'll drop in this resolution sometime tomorrow. Probably we'll see how many signatures we can get. But I appreciate everyone for being here, and thank again to the governor for what he's done. And with that, should I introduce the
Turn
next
over to
person?
Buck, please. Yes.
We'll turn it over to Buck Werbine from the Nebraska Beef Council Association.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Governor. Happy to be here. This is an exciting time. Cattlemen are about trade. Our whole life is trade. You're either buying cattle or selling cattle, so we're all into trade. Love the export trade. Exports in the United States actually surpassed $10 billion last year for the first time. And so Nebraska is a big part of that. And we love exports. They actually, it's now over $400 that it adds to the value of an animal, exports themselves. And so to be able to open more up to the UK is great. The UK and the United States obviously go way back. We got a lot of commonality, including the language. And so this is going to be fun. We also have very similar priorities in animal health and animal welfare, food safety, and sustainability. And so we can really work together. There's always details in trade deals, and so that'll be interesting. Trade to me is three-faceted. It's the producers who we want to trade, and you got the United States government and the government of the UK. And those three have to get together and work together, and that'll get done. I met the ambassador from the UK down in Houston last week. Really cool gal, and they're going to be good to work with. So along the lines of animal welfare, for instance, almost all the vast majority of United States beef producers are certified by BQA, Beef Quality Assurance. And that's an education program, and also one that that helps set up protocols and so forth, very similar to what the UK does. We have, through the FDA and USDA, food safety that's second to none. We have animal health that's second to none, and an inspection service with the FSIS that's second to none. So we check all those boxes. It's just going to be coming to the details of the agreement. And when it comes to sustainability, I like to say cattlemen were sustainable before sustainable was cool. And for instance, since 1966, we have lowered our carbon footprint by 40% while increasing beef production by 66%. And the NCBA has put a goal of carbon neutrality by 2040. So this is a big focus of ours. And of course, when you're a cattle guy and you feel like we've been doing this all the time, you just got to get your brain around showing people what we do and then improving where we need to improve. I'm talking way too long, I'm sorry. We're glad you're here, we're happy about this, and we're happy about your resolution. Now I'd like to introduce Matt Miller with Huddle.
Thanks, Buck. Thanks, Governor. Many people know Huddle for our reach into United States high schools, but many people don't understand the breadth and depth of our international business. Huddle serves 100% of the Premier League, 100% of the German Bundesliga, 100% of Serie A in France, and 100% of the Australian Rules Football League. We serve over 200,000 teams across the world, and we have customers on 6 continents connecting the global sports ecosystem. We are democratizing access to best-in-class sports technology, and our goal is to help every athlete, no matter their geographic or socioeconomic background, achieve their full potential and reach the opportunity they deserve. Global expansion wasn't always on our radar, though. Founded in 2006 by 3 graduates from the Ricketts School here at the University of Nebraska, we were working in a small Lincoln Haymarket office, building software to help the University of Nebraska's football team try to win their next national championship. Fingers crossed for next season. By 2013, we had established ourselves as leaders in sports technology here in the United States, serving high schools, colleges, and professional teams. And we realized that our software could really impact teams across the world. So after a few quick trips to Europe and the UK, we realized that selling and supporting teams like Manchester City, Liverpool, and FC Barcelona was going to require a mix of global thinking and local support. We realized that we could build an international business based here in Lincoln, Nebraska, but it was going to require connections and a team across the world to accomplish the goal. So we started hiring in the UK, and we haven't looked back. In 2014, we started building our team there, and we now employ over 100 people in the UK, nearly 200 people in Europe, and almost 3,000 people outside of the United States, working to help us achieve our objectives. Nearly 50% of our revenue is actually generated by teams outside of the United States, and we continue to work towards reaching every single athlete across the world. We work with these teams and learn their lessons and bring them back to teams here in the United States. And in turn, we take what we learned here and share it with them. We're able to build better products and provide better support with our diverse global team. And I can tell you that we wouldn't be able to reach every athlete without our global presence. That's why we're really excited to hear the governor in Nebraska is spending time building deeper relationships outside of the United States so that we can continue growing our international business. And Buck, I can say this, there's nothing more reaffirming and legitimizing of our Nebraska-based business than when we walk into a European steakhouse and see proudly serving Nebraska beef. So thank you for your time today, and thank you, Governor.
Great, thank you very much, Matt. Appreciate it. That's pretty cool that you are serving all those Premier League football teams. That's a great accomplishment and really a testament to the great software that you've developed here in Nebraska. So
Thank you.
Congratulations. And Senator Friesen, you're exactly right about some of the opportunities. Actually, the UK just moved up their requirement for blending ethanol from 5% to 10%. So that's going to create some opportunities for us to be able to sell ethanol, distillers grains, and of course beef, because that's what we do. So so some great opportunities there. And in fact, you reminded me when you mentioned that you talked to Ambassador Pierce. I actually met with Ambassador Karen Pierce when I was, who's the UK's ambassador to the United States, when I was in DC last week. And the Consul General, who's based in Chicago, Alan Gabashian, came to Nebraska a week or so ago and was at the corn growers there. So again, the UK is interested in strengthening these relationships as well. They want to do it on a state level, so this is why we've got a great opportunity here in Nebraska. So with that, I'll go ahead, again, that's August 20th to the 28th. And one of the other opportunities that will be a part of this is that there is the Nebraska Northwestern game in Dublin during that time frame. And so we will have the opportunity to be able to structure some events around that as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and open up to questions and answers around this topic. We'll, as usual, take the questions on this topic, and then once we exhaust those, we'll move on to other topics. Yeah.
I realize
Grant.
it's not gonna be until August, but are there any COVID protocols you guys are gonna follow on this trip?
So the question is, are there gonna be COVID protocols that we're gonna have to follow on this trip? We're hoping that by the time we get to August, that COVID will be in enough of remission that it won't create any troubles for us. Obviously, that's one of the impacts that we had in November when we went to Germany. Then we were also scheduled to go to Israel, and they had just put in an additional quarantine period, which just made it impractical for us to go there. So we're hopeful not, but we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, Andrew.
How much did the Husker football game play into your scheduling of this particular trip?
Well, typically, we do want to try and find things that are going to be, so the question was, how much did the Husker football game play into the scheduling of this trip? Since we have, the ability to, work with the businesses and the countries to be able to schedule this, we're not doing it around any particular event. We were able to do it around the Husker game so that we would be able to highlight Nebraska and structure some events around that to help promote our state.
And how much does that help, having a big game like that?
So the question is, that Andrew's asking is, how much does that help? Well, I personally think that it will help a lot. We already know there's gonna be a lot of Nebraskans over in Ireland anyway, so we'll have a great opportunity to be able to show off the great people of our state, and I think that we'll be able to structure some nice events around the football game as well to raise the profile of Nebraska, not only in Ireland, but I think also with the UK as we talk about our relationships there. Yep.
I was wondering if you could talk about the impact that these partnerships in other countries will have for Nebraska cattle farmers.
Yeah, so the question was, what kind of impact does these relationships have with, our ranchers here in Nebraska that are raising cattle and so forth? It really is a big deal, as Buck mentioned, and Buck, I'm gonna turn over to you in a minute as well, but relationships matter, right? Developing those relationships are a big deal to be able to have people understand the story. I know that, for example, we were working with a restaurant chain in the UK called the Beast, and their chefs came over to Nebraska so they could see the story. As Buck mentioned, our ranchers were the original conservationists. They wanted to pass along that family ranch into the next generation, so they took care of the land and their animals. In fact, we have the Leopold Award every year that recognizes, our producers who are doing a great job with conservation. And so we need to tell that story because more and more consumers want to know where their food is coming from. And so the relationships is part of how we tell that story. So it's really a great opportunity for us. And with that, Buck, I'm going to let you add anything to that that I just said.
Just to expand a little on your question and get it a little into the weeds, this $400 plus that we've added to the value through exports, a lot of the producers are not seeing much of that. It's going to one sector, and that's a real issue and a big issue, and we're feverishly working on it. However, the point is, if you don't have a market for your product, you don't have a product. And we've got a great market. It's bringing more than it ever has, and we're producing more. And so when you sell a lot of product at a higher price, I think that means good demand. So it begins with that, and then we work on the equity back through the sectors, if I read a little into it, yeah.
Andrew.
Buck again.
Buck.
Yeah. How has
Repeat the question.
How has the global market rebounded from COVID?
Well, $10 billion is a record for
repeat the
us.
question, 'cause I
Oh,
can't
I'm
hear.
sorry. How has the global market impacted beef? Is that it? Okay. We have a record sales, over $10 billion on all United States beef, so it's recovered very well. I mean, the last I saw, half of the world now is middle class by their own definitions. And so as people go up in money, they go up in the food chain and they go up higher protein. And I'm not even going to talk about our competitors, but beef is the top of the deal. So, yeah, it's had a big impact.
All right, other questions on the trade mission? Yeah, go ahead.
Recently, over the last year, we saw so many issues with the cargo ships being stuck out there. Is there any worry of exports and the cargo ships and all that?
So the question was about, it's an ongoing issue with regard to the supply chain, having cargo ships being lined up outside of the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach and so forth, and that problem is still ongoing. So that supply chain issue is one that we're gonna have to continue to work on. Certainly, we had not, even with those issues, we've had a record year for beef exports, we've had a record year for corn exports, soybeans are up. So we're still seeing the opportunity, the ability for us to be able to meet those demands overseas, but it's clear we're gonna have to continue to work on the supply chain. Grant, did you have a question that you were about to ask?
Do you have like a rough itinerary yet? Like, you know, specifically who you're gonna be meeting with when you're in Great Britain and Ireland?
So Grant's asking, do we have a rough itinerary yet? And I would say that itinerary is a work in progress. Cobus, are you here? Cobus, do you have anything that you want to add as far as the itinerary?
It'll be a combination of government and business meetings, talking to leaders in both countries and also businesses.
So it'll be a combination of government and business meetings, as they typically are. So we'll meet with some of the government leaders to develop those relationships. Again, one of the things that our Department of Insurance has done a great job of is working, for example, with the Japanese regulators to make sure there's a nice, smooth relationship there, because Aflac has so much of their business in Japan. So that's one example of how we develop relationships. And then, of course, we'll also be looking to make those connections for business leaders. You know, when we were in Germany in 2019, Lindsay Manufacturing was able to get connected to the government of Germany and be able to make the pitch for selling their road zipper to the German government. So that's another example of how we open up doors for Nebraska companies to be able to sell their products overseas. All right, any other questions on the trade mission? Seeing none, I will go ahead and let everybody go here. But again, thanks very much, Matt. Appreciate it. Great job. Thanks a lot, Senator. Appreciate the resolution. That's awesome. And thank you, Buck. Good seeing you again. Yep. All right. Questions on other topics? Grant?
I think I saw on your schedule you're gonna go before Natural Resources on Wednesday. And I know you haven't necessarily gone before committee hearings on every single bill you're endorsing. Can you talk about why you've made that a priority and why you're choosing to go before the committee on that particular legislation?
Yeah, so with regard to the natural resources, I'll be testifying in front of the Natural Resources Committee with regard to the proposal for the Perkins County canal and letting people know why this is so important for the state of Nebraska. We really need to make sure, we just talked about all the wonderful opportunities we have to export our agricultural products, but we're the largest irrigated state in the country, which means we have to have water. And so we have seen with what's happening in Colorado next door, that they are proposing projects that would take 90% of our water. And that's why building this canal to a reservoir system is gonna be so important for, the next 50 years in Nebraska. So I'll be going in front of the committee to make the case for why that's so important, and of course, highlight that for the legislature so that we get the appropriations to get, working on that project. And again, this is pretty typical for the major proposals that I have that are at at my request. So this year, it happens to be the canal project. In years past, for example, it's been our tax relief projects. Martha?
And related to the canal project, have you had any contact with the Colorado governor since your announcement?
So the question was, have I had any contact with the Colorado governor since we made the announcement? As I mentioned, we called the Colorado, I called the Colorado governor ahead of time to let him know that we were going to be making this announcement. And then Governor Polis came up to me a couple of times when we were at the National Governors Association meetings in DC last week, just to talk about, hey, how do we move forward some conversations, after we get started with our appropriation here to start the canal project. So they're definitely interested in having some more conversations about it as well. Andrew, oh, sorry, Andrew, I thought you were scratching your nose or something, so now you gotta ask a question.
Aren't we already protected, from, flows down the river by a couple of things? Number one, it's I guess a restoration water act that we have with the wildlife, I guess, the trust, as well as Colorado sure that you get some water as well, because the Colorado law protects those farmers on the lower Platte, which ensures streams as well.
So the question was, from Andrew, aren't we already protected with regard to the amount of water coming to Nebraska? Obviously, we've got the Platte River Recovery Plan that U.S. Fish and Wildlife has worked with us, as well as the other states in the region, to be able to make sure we're getting the appropriate amount of water going down the Platte for wildlife purposes, as well as some other, Andrew's one for some state law in Colorado. The issue is here, this is talking about specifically the South Platte River. So if Colorado were to implement these projects and cut off 90% of the water going to Nebraska from the South Platte River, that would put more pressure on the North Platte River, and we would still have those same obligations to U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So it actually makes it more difficult. We're not actually protected by that Platte River Recovery Plan, because we still would have to meet our obligations. It would just have to come out of the North Platte River. And one of the reasons that we need to build this canal and storage reservoir system is because the only way that we can absolutely enforce with Colorado the obligations that they have under that 1923 compact is by building this canal and reservoir system. So we actually are not as protected as we need to be. And in fact, in 2016, when Colorado passed their water laws, they said specifically that they did not want to send any what they termed excess water to Nebraska above legal minimum. And so that's why it's so important that we're protecting our legal rights to that water in the South Platte River, so that we can make sure that we get that water for future generations. Other questions? Yeah, Andrew.
I guess, as you're watching the hospitalization rates, what are you seeing there? What's your latest take on it? It appears that maybe some of the surge has kind of, hit its maximum. Hospital rates are still hovering above, are still high. I guess, what's your take on what's happening with COVID right now?
Yeah, right now, Andrew's asking, what's my take on what's happening with COVID? One of the things we saw with Omicron is that it was living up to its billing as far as being very transmissible. I think over the last 30 days or so, we had about 20% of all the cases we had here in Nebraska during the pandemic. But we only saw about less than 2% of our hospitalizations. So again, kind of what we heard was it was more transmissible but caused less serious disease, and I think that is what we saw in our hospitalizations here. We are seeing hospitalizations decline from the peaks that we saw about a week and a half ago, so that's the good news. I think it's still important for Nebraskans to think about, if you haven't been vaccinated, go get vaccinated. It's going to help you create the antibodies to help fight off the virus. If you haven't been boosted, get boosted. We released our data from 2021 that showed that in Nebraska, if you were vaccinated and boosted, you were 46 times less likely to go to the hospital. And if you were just vaccinated but not boosted, you were still 11 times less likely to go to the hospital than somebody who was unvaccinated. So the vaccines work. We've got the data here in Nebraska to show that. So I encourage people to go get the vaccines. I do think we're seeing that this surge with Omicron is starting to tail off, but we do want people to continue to make sure that if you haven't been vaccinated, that's going to be our best defense, to get vaccinated. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Also, you decided not to apply for additional rental assistance, eviction assistance. Have you reconsidered that at all?
So Andrew's question was with regard to the emergency rental program, and the state of Nebraska has not asked for the second round of that. Again, just getting back to, we don't believe we have the justification to do that. Through a year, we haven't used even half the amount of money that the state had. We had very little uptake from our part of it. We've given $50 million to Omaha, $30 million to Lincoln out of the state's allocation of it for their use. Additional monies have been going to, I think we gave $3.4 million to Douglas County, about $1.7 million to Lancaster County. So of the money the state got, we've actually reallocated much of it to our urban areas, and we're just not seeing the applications come in for it. So with the lowest unemployment rate in our nation's history and no applications, or very few applications, we just don't see a need to apply for the additional rental assistance, so we're not planning on doing it.
I guess, the there are a number of organizations to say that eviction rates are still extremely high. You know, in Lancaster County, they had 77 last week.
So Andrew asked, well, there's organizations saying eviction rates are still very high. Lancaster County had 77 last week. I think a couple things we got to remember. One is that we had a moratorium on evictions. So if you want to think about it, we probably created a backlog of people who might have ordinarily been evicted during that time frame, but because we put a moratorium in place, that did not happen. And I also want to remind people that you can be evicted for a number of reasons. Say you broke the law in your apartment, or you damaged the apartment. There's a variety of reasons why a landlord would take legal action against somebody in their apartment if they were doing things that were not in line with their agreement. So, you know, these are regular course of business kind of things that happen, you know, as well. And so that may be some of the source of what's going on here with regard to these evictions.
And a lot of landlords say that this has helped them out, so that, that they're able to get their money so that they're not having financial difficulties.
And so Andrew's saying a lot of landlords have said that's helped them out, and I believe that's been true. But I also just remind folks that, you know, when we have a tornado or a flood, we ask for federal disaster assistance because we have a reason for it. We can show that. If we don't have that information to show that we need the disaster assistance, we don't ask for it. And this is the same thing with this emergency rental assistance program. We don't have the applications coming in, so we have a hard time justifying that we have a need.
One more question? Ariana?
Yeah, good.
With the homeowners assistance program that was announced last week, we had a viewer reach out saying he was trying to apply, but his mortgage lender wasn't listed, and there wasn't like an other option. Is that one of like the restrictions? Is it only certain lenders, or how does that part work?
All right, so the question was, somebody was applying for the mortgage assistance program that we announced last week, and their mortgage provider was not listed in the people who are on the website, and so they didn't know if that person wasn't participating, or if there just needed to be a category like other on there so they could enter it in manually. And I don't have the answer for that right off the top of my head, so I don't know if any of our three cabinet members here, Tony?
I'll take the question back and get the response.
But Director Goins will take that question back and get a response back to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Well, again, folks, thanks very much. Appreciate it. I hope, thanks for attending here. We're very excited about this trade mission to the UK and Ireland, August 20th to 28th. Please see Cobus Block if you